This video is sponsored by Isolate, manufacturers of the mains conditioner and power cords used by a British audiophile. For more information about these and their other products, please click the link in the description. Audiolab is one of the most consistent brands I can think of. Wow, consistent, that's exciting stuff. But just hang on a second. In a 42-year history, I don't remember them making a duff product. Everything they've produced seems to be solidly built, well engineered, sounds good, and consistent with the Audiolab house sound. The Audiolab 9000A that I reviewed 4 years ago, I consider to be one of the finest ways to spend £650 on an amplifier to this day. It's clean, articulate, with a very good built-in DAC. There's a bit of leanness to the mid-range, which is the typical Audiolab thing, but the 6000A has very good driving ability and will work well with a wide range of speakers, probably more so than any other amplifier in its class I can think of. I reviewed the £1,099 7000A in 2023. For the extra money you get slightly more power, an improved DAC with more connections, including HDMI ARC for easy integration with a TV. The 7000A isn't quite the bargain that the 6000A is, but it's still a very compelling package for around 1100 quid. I never got round to reviewing the 9000A despite having quite a few requests on the channel to do so. So recently, when Audiolab launched the pre-power version in the 9000 range, I requested a review sample and asked them to send me the integrated as well. Let's see what these 9000 series Audiolab amplifiers are about. Starting with the integrated, the 9000A retails for £1,999. It's a purposeful looking full rack width unit. Sturdy plates of aluminium with crisp lines form the chassis, and the matte black finish has a stealthy appeal to it. The IPS LCD display illuminates upon startup. There are 3 dials, one to select inputs, a mode dial to use the amp in integrated mode, have the pre-power sections working independently or just as a preamplifier. On the other side of a 6.35mm 1/4" headphone socket is a larger dial for adjusting volume. The unit also comes with Audiolab's multi-purpose remote control, which provides access to some additional functions. The display can be changed from default to a 1980s style graphic equalizer, a 1970s style VU meter, or switched off. The menu button allows you to change the digital filter options on the DAC. Digital connections are provided via Bluetooth, USB, 2 optical and 2 coaxial, but curiously, HDMI ARC included on the 7000A is omitted here. There's an XLR balanced analog input, 1 set of pre-outs, a fixed input that bypasses the preamp, 3 line level analog inputs and a moving magnet phono input. Internally we have mono power amplifier modules for the left and right channels, with 2 pairs of bipolar transistors per side, capable of handling peaks of up to 15 amps. They're fed by a power supply comprising a 320 VA toroidal transformer and 4 15,000 microfarad capacitors for filtering. The 9000A is rated at 100 watts per channel into 8 ohms and 160 watts per channel into 4 ohms. The DAC is based around a top-tier ESS 9038 Pro chip. It bodes well because Audiolab have produced a number of award-winning DACs over the decades based on ESS chips. This is an unassuming amplifier. It does a really good job of reproducing music without drawing too much attention to itself. There's certainly amplifiers with more colourful presentations than the 9000A, but the more time you spend with it, the more you feel that it's doing a faithful job regardless of the genre of music that you throw at it. Playing Donald Fagen's Morph the Cat, there was a bit of dryness to the sound and some leanness to the vocals. This is the typical Audiolab house sound, but the bass lines motored along nicely and there was enough body to the guitar and accompanying instruments to stave off any overtly cool or analytical vibes. For those of you after thumping bass lines and juicy mid-ranges, this is not the amplifier for you. The 9000A keeps everything tightly under control. It's all presented with very good detail and refinement all the way up to the highest frequencies in a wide soundstage with very good instrument separation. I was able to add more texture to notes by substituting the internal DAC for the £1,650 Gustard R26. Soundstage depth also increased, although not to the extent of the best amplifiers I've heard in this class. The synergy with Denefrip's DACs was off. They don't have a traditional output stage. The signal comes straight off the ladder network, which gives a high output impedance. That's why Denefrip's DACs can sound dull and flat with some amps, like the 9000A. I wouldn't be spending money on external DACs anyway. The internal one will extract about 90% of the performance you're going to hear out of the 9000A. If you've got an extra couple of grand knocking around to spend, you're better off putting that towards more expensive amplification. My Exposure 2510 retails for a similar price. It added some welcome three-dimensionality, a richer mid-range and more timbral insight. The bass had more weight but wasn't as tight as with the Audiolab 9000A. There are amplifiers that have the grip and control of the 9000A but will add more body and warmth. Like the Atl IN200 Signature that I had in for a quick listen a few months ago. The optional DAC and phono stage will take the price up to £2,300. The amp has just been updated to Evo status with revised circuit boards that lower distortion. It's a very different sonic presentation. Atl amplifiers have a distinctly warm sound, whereas Audiolab there's some coolness to the delivery. Although I don't think it goes as far in that direction as the Yamaha AS1200, that's another amplifier that has a tightly controlled musical presentation. For £2,499 you get even more impressive build quality and those sexy VU meters. There's one more comparison I'd like to mention. The Heaven 11 Billy Mark II amplifier has the best bass control and instrument separation I've heard from any sub £2,000 amplifier. In these aspects of performance, it's superior to the Audiolab 9000A. The Billy's now been updated to Mark III guys. Both the Audiolab 9000A and the Heaven 11 Billy have a tighter musical presentation than my Exposure 2510, but don't reproduce harmonics quite as faithfully. That's why the 2510 remains my reference at that price point. But I can see a lot of people cross-shopping the Billy and the 9000A. I think it's going to come down to where they get availability and whether they have an opportunity to demo or not. The Billy is sold direct, whereas the 9000A is sold through traditional distributor dealer networks. As for speaker pairings, my £1,500 Amphion Argon ones are an ideal partner. They produce a clean, crisp sound without sounding artificial. The 9000A gels superbly well with the Argon ones to bring these traits to the fore. It struggled with my Product Response 1 SEs and the Quad Revela ones. Clarity, scale and dynamics were all diminished, but there's nothing for the 9000A to be particularly embarrassed about here. Those speakers respond very well to more expensive amplifiers with considerably more robust power supplies. I think the 9000A is going to work well with plenty of price appropriate speakers. If you're looking for an even tonality, very good detail and decent grip and control within the power envelope of the amplifier, you're going to be pretty happy with what's on offer here. The Audiolab 9000A gets a highly recommended from this channel. The new Audiolab 9000Q preamp and 9000P power amp share the same chassis as the integrated amplifier with crisp black stealthy looks. The preamplifier retails for £1,499 and the power amp for £1,099, but can be bought as a pair for £2,499. The only thing that distinguishes the 9000Q preamp from the integrated is the omission of the mode dial that switches the 9000A between pre-power and integrated mode. The 9000P power amplifier has a plain fascia bar one button to take the unit in and out of standby. The Audiolab 9000Q has one set of XLR balanced analog outputs and two sets of single-ended RCA outputs. The input suite is the same as the integrated: one USB, two optical, two coaxial, one XLR analog input, fixed line out, three line level inputs and a moving magnet phono input. The Audiolab 9000P will accept signals via balanced XLR and single-ended RCA. The power amp can be switched into bridged mono mode should you wish to run a second one. The power will increase substantially from 100 watts to 300 watts per channel into an 8 ohm load. The internals of the 9000Q preamp are substantially upgraded from the 9000A integrated with differentially balanced audio circuitry. The power supplies feeding the analog, digital and moving magnet phonostages are also more sophisticated. The analog circuitry inside the 9000P is lifted directly out of the 9000A integrated amplifier, with the dual mono power amplifier modules keeping the left and right channels separated. However, the power supply circuitry has been enhanced to further reduce RFI and EMI. It's interesting switching between the 9000 series integrated in the pre-power. There is a noticeable difference in clarity and focus, but I'm glad I had both here at the same time to pinpoint the differences. The 9000Q and P has a slightly wider soundstage, but it's considerably deeper, and the location of performers within it is a lot more secure. The information comes from a darker place and also falls back into a quieter place. It's in terms of spatial presentation, instrument separation, and the easefulness by which details from recordings are extracted that the 9000Q and P comfortably justify the £500 extra outlay over the 9000A integrated. But I'd still like to see a little bit more body and texture when it comes to vocals and instruments. Yeah, the Audiolab 9000Q and P provides a little bit more macro detail, which is most obvious in terms of instrument separation when compared to my Exposure 2510, but my reference integrated amplifier sub £2,000 still provides a little bit more subtlety and richness of tone, which for me provides a bit more emotional connection to the music. Play the title track from Bruce Springsteen's politically charged album, The Ghost of Tom Joad, and the differences are clear in the weight of his voice and the rasp of his harmonica playing. I also can't help but feel that the preamp is held back a little bit by the power amp. Yeah, adding a second one in bridge mono configuration will increase power, but I'd like to see Audiolab produce some dedicated mono blocks with proper balanced architecture and with massive power supplies and huge peak current capability. That should really get things motoring. As it is, the 9000QP combination sounds clean, balanced, but a little matter-of-fact in its presentation. As was the case with the 9000A integrated, you get the speaker pairing right and there's very little to complain about. My Amphion Argon 1 sounded great, but I think people will naturally gravitate towards Wharfedale being a fellow IAG stablemate. I've heard the 9000A integrated in a couple of demos with Wharfedale heritage speakers, specifically the Lintons and the Dovedales, and there was a nice synergy between those, so I would suggest that people check out those combinations. For context, the Audiolab pre-power doesn't have the balls and authority of a Hegel H400. It will drive more difficult speakers like my vintage ProAct Response 1 SCs and the Quad Revela 1s more effortlessly. The H190 adds more body to the mid-range and welly to bass notes. You're looking at an extra £750 for the Hegel though. If it was me, I'd be saving until I could justify spending the extra, but if you've only got £2,500 to spend, the Audiolab 9000Q and P compares very favourably with other integrated amplifiers and pre-powers at that price. The same designer is responsible for the recently launched Quad 33 preamp and 303 power amp. They retail for £1,199 individually or as a pair for £2,395. I feel that the triples output stage on the 303 power amp is trying to fix a problem that no longer exists, something that I cover in detail in my review, but I understand why Jan Ertner wanted to stay faithful to the original Peter Walker design topology. As for the 33 preamplifier, it has a more basic architecture than the fully balanced design incorporated in the new Audiolab 9000Q, but it is also £300 cheaper. IG is going to sell bucket loads of the Quad 33 303 because of the vintage looks and because the sound has been tailored to give that warm, nostalgic appeal. But make no mistake, the Audiolab pre-power is the better sounding combination. There's less coloration, better resolution, it's going to be less genre specific, and it comes with a very well built-in DAC. As far as the integrated is concerned, it offers a notch up in performance but also a lot more flexibility when it comes to future upgrades. The Audiolab 9000Q and P get highly recommended from this channel. So my question for today is, where are you at with your amplifier journey? Are you happy with what you have? And if you are, what are the reasons why? Perhaps you're planning some upgrades that you can let me know about in the comment section. I'd love to hear about that. I'm sure you know what to do by now if you want to support me here on what I do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Check me out on Patreon. There's a couple of tiers you can access there if you think I can help you on your audiophile journey. Also check out the ABA Club on Patreon, which has some great ways to interact with me and fellow patrons. But for today, for now, I'm British Audiophile, signing off.